Good morning, Devils fans. We're talking about the real Johnny Hockey, as today's spotlight is on John Marino. Born May 21st, 1997, 2 minutes apart from his twin brother, Paul III. The parents, Paul II, who owned a liquor store for years, and mom Jen, who's a chief marketing officer at a bank, never expected how much their lives would revolve around hockey, especially with the news that came with their son's birth. Paul III was born with bowed legs, about 120 degrees from normal. There was fear he would never walk. He'd wear corrective shoes during the day and braces at night. Thankfully, by 9 months old, Paul was walking, but his legs remained heavily bowed. When the boys were around 18 months old, their doctor had two suggestions. Either break Paul's legs to straighten them, or give ice skating a shot. Between the skates, stance, and stride, ice skating is actually a very effective measure in correcting bowed legs. For every doctor visit, John would accompany his brother, and so of course, when his treatment turned to ice skating, John would join Paul in that as well. And by 2 years old, both the boys would become obsessed with skating and hockey. Even when on family vacations to Disney at 5 years old, John would ask his parents to go home early so they could go skate. After watching Crosby on the Jay Leno show, when the boys were still very young, and saw the bit about Crosby shooting into his dryer, the boys would follow in his footsteps and spend hours upon hours in their basement practicing shots into the dryer. Both brothers wanted NHL careers, but even from a young age they knew those paths would be different. For John wanted to be a player, and Paul in management, a GM eventually. Spoiler alert, John is a hockey player, and Paul is a statistical analyst for the LA Kings. One note, Paul, thanks to that ice skating, his bowed legs went from that 120 degrees down to 5 from last I could find. Possibly is even better to this day, but the treatment was a wonderful success. John and Paul would play at every level together growing up, pee-wee, high school, even into college, although the path there was slightly different. But it was here where John would start to catch the eyes, as he mostly remained under the radar, not having his growth spurt until late into high school. As fate would have it, John was good friends with teammates of a few years with Luke Stevens, the son of Kevin Stevens, a back-to-back Stanley Cup champion with the Penguins in 91 and 92, who was now a special assignment scout with the Penguins, specifically amateur scouting and college free agents. You might see where this is going, and I'll touch on that in just a moment. John played his junior career with the South Shore Kings of the Eastern Junior Hockey League and United States Premier Hockey League. At the 2015 NHL entry draft, John was ranked 63rd for North American skaters and would end up being drafted 154th overall in the 6th round by the Edmonton Oilers. He would spend his first draft season in his last year of high school with the Tri-City Storm of the United States Hockey League before committing to playing college with Harvard, where his brother also attended, as I noted earlier, but as a video coordinator for the team. John would spend 3 seasons at Harvard, even having some time on a pairing with Riley Walsh. When the time came for John to decide if he was going to commit to his senior year or sign with the Oilers, for if he did play that final year at Harvard, Edmonton would lose his rights, it seemed he was leaning at returning to college. He had even told family, his friends, and coaches at Harvard that his intentions were to return. But upon hearing this, a few dominoes fell. Edmonton, not wanting to lose John for nothing, would trade him for a conditional 6th-round pick to the Pittsburgh Penguins. From what I hear, all thanks to Kevin Stevens, who made a strong case, having watched John grow up with his son, following John's career, that he was worth the move for the Penguins, even if it was just a 6th-round pick. So, while his intentions were absolutely to return to Harvard, instead he would attend Penguins training camp, preseason, and would make their opening night roster. John would get his first point on October 26, 2019 against the Dallas Stars, and would score his first goal on November 4th against the team he grew up cheering up for, the Boston Bruins. January 3rd, 2021, he would sign a 6-year, $26.4 million contract with the Penguins. However, due to cap constraints, which is a fairly reoccurring theme on this series, he would get traded, as we all know, to the New Jersey Devils. So after 3 seasons with the Penguins, he would put up 10 goals, 64 points in 189 games, his most productive season coming as a rookie. July 16th, 2022, he is moved to the New Jersey Devils for Ty Smith and 3rd round pick. Marino would instantly gel with the team, sending waves through our fan base asking if this guy was one of the best defensive defensemen in the league, and he was playing pretty close to that for a stretch. Regardless of how you want to grade out his play compared to his peers, the trade was an obvious steal for the Devils, as John was a rock on the back end in every game he'd play. Although he did miss a decent stretch with an upper body injury, it did not seem to affect his play at all upon return. In total, in his first season as a Devil, he would put up 4 goals, 18 points in 64 games, and 4 assists in our 12 playoff games. So what about his actual play on the ice? Well, obviously, Marino is not a stellar offensive producer, although his rookie season seemed to have put him potentially on that trajectory, as he shifted much more into a defensive defenseman. Which is kind of surprising even still to this day, because when you watch him play, he has obvious soft hands and surprisingly good edges, where you'd think those counting stats would look a lot more like his rookie year, but instead, we just had this consistent defensive stalwart, so I'm not really going to complain. His transition game is impeccable, being able to make strong passes out of the zone, really helping to generate rush offense, which works perfectly for our team. His ability to prevent the other team from entering our zone is one of the best in the league, almost requiring you to play a dump and chase game because he will not let you enter the zone cleanly. And even if you decide to go dump and chase, it isn't surefire, because while he's not as elite in this area as the other facets of his game, his retrieval game is still really, really good, which flows right into that transition game back out of the zone, and that makes him the defenseman that he is. All this combined, you can see why we fell in love with his defensive play. Even when he can't just take you out at the blue line because maybe an on-man rush or the like, I can't remember a time Marino didn't perfectly play a 2-on-1, either swiping the puck away from the carrier's stick or breaking up a cross-ice pass. Defensively, there's not much more you can ask for from this guy. Now, he's not the absolute biggest, coming in at 6'1", around 180, but he is still very strong on the puck. He's not going to throw many hits, but he can certainly take them. Not going to just get knocked off the puck behind the net, being physically outplayed. You toss in his strong penalty killing numbers, and he's just about everything you want and more from a defenseman. Besides maybe some elite offensive play, but we don't really need that on this team, thankfully. So what about off the ice? Well, there really isn't much I could find outside of a couple pieces of media he's done. One bit with the Penguins, and he had the fish tossing media piece that he did with Seattle and Bastion. In Seattle with Bastion. But from the interviews he has done, you can tell he's quite intelligent. But as all reports say, he's very soft-spoken, reserved kind of guy. From all accounts, he's the nicest guy you're going to meet and very easy to get along with when you talk to his teammates. So can't really ask for more than that. We don't need him to be bombastic and in the media spotlight. It's not his role in this team. So, John, enjoy your more low-key lifestyle. So what about going forward? Well, we've gone for at least 4 more seasons at $4.4 million per, which already feels like a steal now, and it's going to look even better when the cap jumps. He feels like a natural starting piece to pair with Luke when he makes his start with the team this coming season, but we probably will even find him paired up with Ball or even Siegenthaler if we need more of a shutdown pair at points in the game. Kind of the role he played for basically the entire season with Ryan Graves. Although you could say that line was a bit more rounded than maybe a Siegenthaler pairing would be, but I think Ball might be able to fill that niche quite well if he continues on his trajectory. We don't really need John to be any more than he already is. Given his age, there should be no concern of any fall off from his game. If anything, after a full year in our system, feeling a bit more comfortable with the area and the team, maybe some of that latent offensive talent comes out a bit more. And now to my top 3 moments with John Marino. Well, number 3 is going to be a stretch of play where at the beginning of the season, there was legitimate arguments that he was the best defenseman in the league. He seemed to be unstoppable in any one-on-one situation. You were just not going to get around him. You were not going to make any plays going one-on-one against John Marino. If you did get into our defensive end, he clearly was clearing the puck back up and creating that rush offense. Now, he did not maintain that level of play for the full season, but even when he was not at that absolute peak, his defensive play was still top notch. Coming in at number 2 is going to be fairly late in the regular season, where he had a 3-assist night. Now, maybe it wasn't too hard to come by points in this game, as it was an 8-1 win over Columbus, but still, we saw a bit of that offensive acumen from John. Putting up 3 assists in one game was awesome to see, and he was just all around probably one of, if not the best defenseman in that game. And finally, coming in at number 1 is, of course, his assist on that Tomas Tatar goal to put us up 2-0 in Game 7 versus the Rangers. He almost scored that goal himself, cutting across from the right side to the left, just skating above the top of the blue ice and the paint. Almost tucked it in around Shesterkin, but instead missed it just wide. It bounces off the boards. He retrieves it himself deep in the zone. Back pass behind him, right to Tatar in the front, puts it in behind Shesterkin, and we all remember that celebration. So, of course, that was the one that stuck out the most to me in my mind. Cannot say enough about Mr. Johnny Hockey, John Marino, and what he has done for this team on the back end. Cannot wait to see these next years with him on the team, and I think he will fit perfectly with Luke, and it's going to do great things with this defense and this team. So let me know what you guys think. That's going to do it for today. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. Let's go Devils.